Primetime Sports with Scott Alexander is underwritten by Task Performance.
Crescent City Steakhouse, a true neighborhood restaurant operated by the Vojkovic family since 1934, is the oldest steakhouse in the city of New Orleans. Serving only hand-cut, prime-aged, corn-fed beef for over 80 years, Crescent City Steakhouse has become a dining destination for both die-hard locals and adventurous travelers who seek traditional, timeless New Orleans cuisine. Crescent City Steakhouse, 1001 North Broad, on the corner of St. Philip, in the heart of New Orleans.
Fall in love with autumn with PJ's new seasonal lattes. Our pumpkin latte brings you all the flavors of a pumpkin pie with hints of cinnamon and nutmeg, like your favorite holiday dessert in a cup. And our s'mores latte with flavors of toasted marshmallows, warm milk chocolate, and graham cracker cinnamon is sure to bring back campfire memories. The PJ's Fall Seasonal Lattes, available at your local PJ's only for a limited time.
Well, here's the bottom line. Well, it's funny that you say that. Let me tell you. Good evening and welcome to Primetime Sports. Hey, I'm your host, Scott Alexander, and we have our pre-Labor Day show for you today. Hey, this is officially the last day before my version of summer ends. Kids are already back in school, and college football gets underway this week. I cannot wait. Hey, but first, the Saints have one preseason game left. That is this Thursday night in the Superdome versus the Los Angeles Rams. This past weekend, the Saints, well, they played the other team from Tinseltown, the Chargers, and this time it was on the West Coast. But after trailing 7-0 after the end of the first quarter, the Saints unleashed 36 unanswered points to win that game, 36-7, and it looks like the Hoodats are rounding into regular season form, and it should be fun. Hey, by the way, LSU, who play the Miami Hurricanes this Sunday evening, they've officially announced, no surprise here, that Ohio State transfer Joe Burrow is going to be the starter at quarterback for the LSU Tigers. That should be interesting to watch. Miles Brennan will be his backup. But before that, just 48 hours from right now, the Tulane Green Wave, they host a tough ACC foe. It's Wake Forest this Thursday night in Ullman Stadium. The Demon Deacons, who won 8 games last season in a tough conference, well, they open up as a 7-point road favorite in that game. Also Thursday night, Southeastern, the Lions with their new head coach, they play UL Monroe on Thursday. They square off. And on Saturday, the UL Raging Cajuns, well, they host Grambling, and Nichols, who is expecting big things this year, travels to Kansas on Saturday as well. Also for LSU, starting cornerback Christian Fulton was reinstated by the NCAA. That is great news for the former Rummel star, and he will not have to sit out a second year. That is big time for the LSU defense. Hey, by the way, former LSU wide receiver Odell Beckham Jr. just signed the largest contract ever for an NFL wide receiver. 5 years, $95 million, over $60 million of that is guaranteed. Congrats to him. Hey, on to the NBA. One of my favorite players ever, of all time. That's right, San Antonio Spurs swingman Manu Ginobili. He retired yesterday after 16 years in the association, 4 NBA championships with the Spurs. He, Tim Duncan, and Tony Parker, who you see right there, they form one of the best big threes in NBA history. Make no mistake about it. They were dynamic. Duncan won 5. The other 2 won 4. Hey, Ginobili, in my opinion, a surefire Hall of Famer. Also won an Olympic gold medal. Don't forget, with Argentina. Remember when they beat the Americans in 2004? Well, he was the star of that team. He's going to be going down and known as one of the craftiest players to ever play the game. And he had sneaky athletic skills. He could dunk on you in a heartbeat. And by the way, he'll always be credited, although he's Argentinian, as the guy that brought the term Eurostep to the NBA. That is a style of basketball that is popular in Europe, and he was the king of it all. Manu Ginobili, you will be missed, and I will miss you already. Hey, speaking of basketball, the Big Three, that tournament, they just had their second championship. You know, Commissioner Ice Cube's league, MVP Corey Maggette with the power. They beat Three's company. Maggette had a great season. But how about LSU's big man, Big Baby. He was an integral part of that team. He played with Birdman on this team, and he had a great little season there. But the most intriguing player in this league was LSU legend Mahmoud Abdul-Rauf. He hit another game-winning shot in the third-place game. Mahmoud is back. He is every bit like Steph Curry. Those comparisons that Phil Jackson made, if you watched him play this season, you'll know what I'm talking about. And when it comes to politics, I don't identify myself as Republican. I don't identify myself as Democrat. I identify myself as someone who believes in people that do the right thing. And John McCain, may he rest in peace, because he is a guy that always did the right thing, in my opinion. So there he is. Listen, we have a great show for you today. Ken Berthelot. Also, we're going to have Tulane AD Troy Dannen, and we're also going to have a fantasy football expert, Nick Guarisco. Stay tuned on Primetime Sports.
Shake it, Frank, keep the man the thing. Way out my nerve and see a ship about to sink. And when he paints a line, you can take it to the bank. You know, there we go. Shake it, Frank. But he nervous, got a condition. He's working in the kitchen, smoking Luckies, ashes flying.
Hey, welcome back to Primetime Sports. I told you we had a fun show for you. You fantasy football nuts, and I know there's plenty of you out there. Hey, Nick Guarisco is going to fill you in. He's the guy from Big Easy Sports Talk. He comes every year this time of year. And later in the show, I have a first-time guest in Ken Berthelot. I grew up watching Ken Berthelot on TV, so when I saw him last week, I was like, I've got to get you on the show. He has got some funny old New Orleans stories for you. But my first guest is a guy we've had on a couple times since he came to New Orleans from Northern Iowa. He is the Tulane Athletic Director. His name is Troy Dannen. And to recap, right when he got here, he had to make some big hires. Head coach in volleyball, head coach in baseball, head coach in basketball, head coach in football. That's 4 of the premier sports on campus, and he had to make hires literally almost right away. So here he is again, Troy. Welcome back to the show, buddy.
Year 3, your football season, year 3 for us, and couldn't look any more forward to it. I've been telling everybody, the first year was curiosity. You talk about hiring all those coaches, and It's like, where are we at? Where do we sit? How are we going to gauge ourselves against everybody else? And then last year was maybe a year of hope.
Yeah.
I hope we're closer. I hope we're ready to compete. And I think this year we walk in and there's expectations across the board. All those coaches have had a chance to get a couple classes under their belt. They've got their staffs. The support mechanisms underneath of the programs for marketing and compliance and development, they're all in place. So now we walk in with legitimate expectations, and it's a much different feeling. It's a much more fun feeling to walk into.
It's fun, and I'm going to say this. I'm going to speak as if you're agent, because I call it like I see it. I'm not speaking for you. I'm speaking like I saw it last year. This team could have easily been 8-4. They had so many games that went, maybe even 9-3. So many games that went the other way. They ended up being 5-7. Everybody talks about the SMU game where they got to the goal line, should have scored, and I think they did score, and that would have put Tulane in a bowl. But does that give this team any extra incentive, knowing that they came so close in so many games, and particularly that SMU game at the end, and they're going forward this season?
My observation watching it, and I'm distant from the coach, but I think that was the wake-up call that we're better than we think we are.
Yeah.
We're closer than we think we are. And I think everybody came into this year, there's a different focus in the room. There's a different focus on the field. There's a different level of confidence in the field that I'm not sure everybody understood that the talent was there. And it comes down to execution in those 1 or 2 plays a game that make the difference between winning 4 and losing 4.
It's crazy.
And we're always going to live in that world. We're always going to live where the margins are thin. But I think now the guys understand how close they are to the positive side of those margins. So you'll see a much more confident team and a team with a lot higher self-expectation coming in this year.
I love the business talk right there, where the margins are thin, talking from a true man on the other side, on the business side. Hey, but Tulane did win a close one, too. They came back against Army, and to me, that was the game that brought Jonathan Banks out. Man, he came and got a couple 4th down conversions. He had to drive this team into the end zone to win the game, and they got it done. Here's that game right there. But this quarterback here is a great leader for this team. I had him on the show back in June. I was extremely impressed with his demeanor, his acumen on what's going to happen this season. He knows what's going on and his athletic ability.
I'll tell you, if you remember that Army game, about a series before he scored, he got drilled at midfield.
Yes.
And not many people could have gotten themselves back up again. And obviously he got hurt, and that impacted him down the line. But tough guy physically, but tough mentally. At the end of the season, when he really figured out what those reads were, and, the last 3 or 4 games, he was good as any quarterback in the league. I'll take him over any quarterback in the league right now. And I know the UCF guy gets a lot of attention.
Yeah.
But highly skilled. He's got the confidence of the team, and physically, he's an NFL-looking guy on the field. So it's fun to have him as your signal caller coming into the year and not having any question. And with that year of experience, Willie's system requires the quarterback to understand a lot, to read a lot and to make a lot of decisions on his own when the play starts. And we all feel good about Jonathan.
A lot of things going on at Tulane besides the stuff on the field in the next couple of weeks, and I'm going to get to at least 3 of them. One of them I want to bring up because when I first moved back to New Orleans about 5 or 6 years ago, there was an injury up in Tulsa. Devin Walker, the defensive back, was paralyzed, and he has become a symbol at Tulane, and now you're doing some great things this week. You're officially announcing you're retiring his jersey in all sports. Talk about Devin and what's going to happen.
Well, Devin to me epitomizes everything you would hope for in your son, your athlete, anyone you're close to, that one, when adversity hit him, he responded more positively in a stronger way than I think anybody I've ever seen. Secondly, is he epitomizes the message that you're trying to get across to. We have 350 student athletes, and Devin epitomizes what a student athlete should be, what you hope they are. He's been focused on his education. He's cared about the people around him. He's continued to embrace. He has never resented what happened.
Right.
He has never complained about what happened, but he's embraced what his life can be, and he's taken full advantage of it. And so many people get opportunities and let them slip through their fingers.
Sure.
And, Devin had opportunities that God took away from him. But yet he's taken and created new opportunities from that. He's a great role model, not just to the guys, not just to the student athletes, but to our staff.
Right.
When you think, when you do this, when you go to work every day, he's the reason you go to work. Is guys like Devin, and to be able to take his number and retire it, that no one at Tulane will ever wear it again in any sport.
That is so cool.
And for them to understand, we have 18s in baseball, we have 18s in, for the student athletes who are going to follow to understand, here's why you're not going to wear this uniform, and here's what this man did.
Yes.
And this is where you can go, and this is what you can accomplish. I think he's going to continue to make a positive impact on Tulane long after any of the rest of us will.
I mean, I met the guy the first time I met him. He pumped me up. I mean, he's got a lot of positivity and inspiration in him. Hey, one of the greatest coaches in college football for the last 2-3 decades, Mack Brown. Many may forget he got one of his first head coaching jobs, if not his first, was at Tulane. I know he's at Appalachian State at one point, but he also was an assistant at LSU. A lot of people don't remember that. Right. Great years in the 90s with the North Carolina Tar Heels, and then he went on and made his mark as a NCAA championship winning head coach with the Texas Longhorns. He is coming back to campus tomorrow night, and he is going to be honored at this game on Thursday.
First time he's been back since he left for North Carolina. He's going in the College Football Hall of Fame, and one of the things that tries to happen across the country in that situation is any place, any stop a coach or an athlete had, you bring them back and you honor them if you possibly can. Of course, with Mack's role on television, it's not
hard.
Easy. It's not
easy.
At
ESPN, correct.
But to find that opening Thursday night, he's coming here from an Alamo Bowl event, flying in just for this. Come in and have some dinner with some of the former guys, Terrence Jones and the like that played for him. Talk to the team Wednesday night. We'll honor him on the field Thursday and take him on a little tour, show him the place. And one of the great things that's happened, and Willie's really been a leader in this, is embracing the history of the program. The 98 team's going to be honored here in a couple of weeks, but our history, we can say we haven't won many games in a few years, but Tulane has a storied football history.
Yeah.
And to be able to embrace Mack, it's a really neat opportunity for all of us.
Now, have you gotten to know him at all?
Over the phone, we've met once or twice in person, but we've talked a lot, and Willie's talked to him quite a little bit because
he was at Sam Houston, right? In Texas, right?
So there's a Texas connection, and Mack and I have talked a little bit about Willie and a little bit about the direction the program is going, and I'm looking forward to him being back because the Wilson Center, which is really the the centerpiece of the administration of the student athletes, was under construction when Mac was here. So
that's cool.
It's kind of a step back in time.
He's a true gentleman. I got a chance to have dinner with him years ago because we went to Austin to do a basketball game with Tim Brando and others, and he and the athletic director went to have dinner the night before. True gentleman. You're going to enjoy that. Hey, and next week, and for Tulane fans, this is something they'll never forget. The 1998 team that went 12-0. And if you look at the scores on this schedule, you'll see 72, 52, 63, 48, 49, 41, 41, 42. This team could score some points. And they actually played pretty darn good defense as well. Certainly, they finished number 7 in the country. Some people like to see, like this fan here, national champions. BCS is BS, what they say. But the fact is, Tulane had a great year. Now it's 20 years later, and on 9/8, which is the year, September 8th this year, for game number 2 against Nichols, Tulane is going to honor this great team.
It's amazing how those stars line up, especially the 9/8 doing this
on
September 8th.
I love that.
But this being the 20th anniversary of that team, and since I got here, people hold up the 73 team that shut LSU out.
Yes.
They hold up the Liberty Bowl team, and they hold up this team as those that we remember. And I don't think Sean's coming because, of course, South Florida's involved, and he's on that South Florida staff. But Sean has communicated either with Willie or I about every week since we got here. He still has a love and a passion for this place, and that team is still, when we recruit today, we talk about, look, I don't care what's happened in the last 5 years or 10 years. This is what we're capable of at Tulane because we've done it. And if you look at the people we did it against that year, it can happen again.
It can happen again. I love that you said that because that's my next question. What can this Tulane football program be? Kind of give it a comparison to maybe a school out there that is similar, that Tulane can become or aspires to become.
Well, in some ways, I narrow it down to the private schools.
Right.
Because we're a unique group. There's 1 or 2 of us in every of the Power 6 leagues in the country. You got your Vanderbilt, the Dukes, the Northwesterns, the Stanfords. Pick your poison in that group. I would love to be the Stanford of our league, to where Stanford's shown you as a private school, you can compete as a high academic school. You can compete every year in your league for league championships. Northwestern, we've used Northwestern as a model.
Great model.
Coaches talk to Fitz quite a little bit. I've talked to their athletic director and to Fitz some, that you're in a big city. The institutions are very similar in a lot of respects. And so, what did they do to get that program?
Now, you speak of Northwestern head coach Fitzgerald.
Yes.
Yes. Because you get me confused with Fritz and Fitz.
Oh yeah.
So Fritz is talking to Fitz.
And I got a Fitz as the president.
Right.
But Coach Fitz and there are a lot of similarities there to what we're trying to do, and how do you build your roster, and in this high-end academic environment, how do you build it? But they've shown, it's one thing to have a great season. It's one thing to do what we did in '98. But I think the goal here is to do something that's sustainable, and hope you can see a 98 happen here and there, but be sustainably successful. And that's really what Northwestern has done.
All right, so I've had Coach Fritz, Coach Dunleavy in basketball, and Coach Jewett in baseball on this show many times. And I really love all 3 of these guys. They're easy to root for. So tell me, right now, after 3 years, and I know 2 of the teams have only been, well, actually, they're all going to their 3rd year, right?
Yeah.
So how are we feeling?
First and foremost, they're all great human beings.
Yes, they are.
And you can go to bed easy at night. There are a lot of things happen in college athletics, and integrity and character is behind a lot of the failings that happen around the country. I don't worry about that.
Right.
And that is as important as anything to the community, to the alums, to everybody that would claim a stake in Tulane. They're finding a way to be successful in different ways. Travis walked into a program that hadn't had much success, but it had had a couple of hot years.
Sure.
And he's recruited. He's got great talent. I love the addition of Daniel Latham coming in as pitching coach. They should be in a position to play in the postseason this year. Coach Dunleavy has done a remarkable job in that he's shown he can develop. He's got the 2 most improved players of the year, each of his 2 years in the league. He's recruiting high-level talent that we haven't had. We've got great depth. I watched him play a lot this summer, And a couple of the guys that set out last year might have been the 2 best-looking guys on the floor all
Wow,
summer. So we're gonna see yet another.
And I thought that basketball team was exciting to watch this past year.
They were. We didn't have a lot of depth,
Right.
and some injuries caught up to us.
Right.
But I think we'll have 10, 11 guys who can play this year, and I think we'll see the next generation of basketball, and that program's going to contend for the postseason this year. And then of course, Willie's got this thing ready to go in the postseason. If you look at what are the expectations of a program, if you can do things right. If you can have success and have expectations to me in the postseason, then from where we were, that's a great step. And I think in short order, these are quick rebuilds. Going into year 3, most places they would say you go into year 4, you go into year 5. But going into year 3, we can have the expectations. I'm thrilled to work with those guys.
And I want to remind people of one thing. People always say, oh, year 3, they should be winning for sure. Well, let me remind you, this is only the second full year of recruiting. Right. Of these coaches. I mean, Willie came in and he basically had to salvage what he had from the previous coaches recruiting. So expectations are high, and I know everybody wants to win, but keep that in mind. The players that these coaches brought in for their programs, this is only the second year of their, and they're all young. They're just freshmen and sophomores.
And that's the lag.
Right.
We're freshmen and sophomores. We got a lot of that in all 3 of those sports. What I told our football team, and I'll tell the other sports the same thing, I'm really proud of our seniors because, a lot of tumult was interjected into their careers here, and they responded, and they responded positively. They embraced it. They saw an opportunity to get better, and now these seniors are in a position for great things to happen, and not everybody's willing to do that, and our guys did, and they deserve a lot of credit because coaching transitions are hard. They're hard on families. They're hard on friendships, but they're really hard on the guys in the locker room.
Yep.
They were recruited by Curtis. The seniors in this team, they'll tell you to a man, they love Curtis. They love the staff that they had, but they've embraced Willie. They love this staff now, and not everybody's willing to do that, and they deserve great credit.
Well, speaking of great Tulane legends, the owner of Task Performance, the apparel wear, is the last Tulane athlete to be all SEC back in the days in the 60s when they were in the Southeastern Conference. That is Al Andrews, and that is Task Performance. Have you had it before?
Al, so when I first came, Al took good care of me.
Okay.
And I've been needing to make another visit to Al to take good care of me again because my closet's full of this because Task is the best.
Well, he just took care of you.
The best stuff.
It is the best, isn't it? You put it on, it just feels so good.
It's awesome. So I'll be proud to take this and this blue. I got a lot of green, but green and blue looks good in the closet.
There you go. And you got dark blue now. And this, by the way, this is on campus. You have no excuse not to go to Shays de la Shays right there on Maple. Have you been yet?
I have been several times.
All right.
And to go on you, Scott, makes it an even better meal.
It is better when someone else is paying. All right, my man.
All right, thanks,
Troy,
Bert.
Dannen, I appreciate you. This segment went longer than I expected, but I loved every minute of it. So get out there and root your Tulane team on. Ullman Stadium, Thursday night, they play Wake Forest Demon Deacons. What a great opener. And then they're honoring the great 98 team at the Nichols game on September the 8th, 9/8. So that'll be fun. Check that one out as well. And I'm looking forward to some fun times with the Green Wave all season long. Hey, coming up next, fantasy football. Well, there's a lot of you out there that play it. I know a lot of you are watching the show because of it. So stay tuned because Nick Guarisco is the best in the city of New Orleans, and to me, he's the best in the country. He is that good. Stay tuned right here on Primetime Sports.
Primetime Sports with Scott Alexander is underwritten by Task Performance.
The owners of the De La Chaise Wine Bar on St. Charles Avenue have opened up their newest creation uptown on Maple Street called Chez de la Chaise, a new local wine bistro featuring a larger menu of small and large plates, a brighter atmosphere, and full table service. Additionally, patrons can enjoy a large patio out front as well as an extensive wine list offering selections from around the world. It's Chez de la Chaise, 7708 Maple Street between Carrollton and Broadway.
Rock and roll will never die. It's old New Orleans, my oh my. Come on, baby, let's go rock and roll at the city lane. All night, let's roll, let's rock and roll. Baby, do the rock and roll. At Mid-City Lane's the home of rock and roll.
Hey, welcome back to Primetime Sports, and I'm going to get right to it because this is the segment that a lot of people this time of year love to watch. It's fantasy football time, so that means your drafts are either going on this week and most likely starting next week, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Opening game is next Thursday for the NFL. And fantasy football drafts are coming fast and furious. And I know one guy that's done a few mock drafts. In fact, I did a fun one for charity with Nick Guarisco, my guest. He is obviously with BigEasySportsTalk.com. Check that site out if you want some information. But better yet, listen for the next 15 to 20 minutes right here. Nick, what's happening, man?
Thanks for having me on, Scott.
Again.
I'm pumped.
You have been a frequent guest of the show, and you're recently married since. Congratulations on that.
That's right.
Beautiful Rachel Richardson Guarisco now.
That's right.
Since I've known you, I've known her, I feel like, when y'all first started law school. So you're a recent law school graduate and a lawyer now. How is that going?
It's going really well. We're practicing at Oakdale. We do family law and immigration law up there.
Oakdale, North Shore?
It is about 3 hours away from here, central LA.
So that's where you're practicing?
That's where I'm practicing.
And you go to work there every day?
I'm living up there now.
Oh, I didn't know you were living there?
Oh, yeah. We're
okay.
living up there.
Okay. Where is this exactly?
It is about 30 minutes south of Alexandria.
I did not know you're up there. I get in that neck of the woods occasionally. I'm going to have to look you up. I didn't know. Hey, let's get to fantasy football. Tell people how long you've been doing it, how you got into it, and why you got into it.
I've been playing for about 16 years. As a 10-year-old, I just became obsessed with the NFL, and we started a neighborhood league about 16 or 17 years ago.
So you're like 10.
And it's still going on now. We just had our draft last week.
Isn't that the best?
It's awesome.
I've been doing it for 33 years, back before anybody was doing NFL. We just, baseball was kind of big at the time, and NFL was non-existent until maybe the early 90s, really. And we put these things together, and it was much less intricate than it is now, but we kind of built to where it was what they're doing now. But let's talk about the leagues that people play. There's standard leagues, which I think you prefer, and there's PPR leagues, which means point per reception, which for me adds more excitement, and maybe because I'm ADD, I like to have a lot of things to keep track of. And that means every time your tight end or your wide receiver or your running back catches a ball, you get an extra point. So explain the differences and why you like standard better.
I like standard better because not every reception in a real game is worth that much value in real life. A lot of these running backs, for example, will get, or these Julian Edelman-like receivers will get these screen passes for 2 yards. And in fantasy football, in PPR leagues, you're awarded 1 whole point for that, which is the equivalent of 10 yards, which is basically a first down.
Right.
First downs are highly more valuable in real life. In my leagues, we actually do a little variation. We every 5 catches is worth 2 points. So we reward usage like PPR is intended to do, but it's not so much to where every single catch, even if for negative yards, is going to be a full point. But I play in both of them. I'm not a commissioner of every league, so I play in both styles. And now PPR is more of the mainstream. That's ESPN's default now. So now PPR is more of the standard, if you will.
I agree with your reasoning, though. I really do. But I personally like it because, like I said, there's more things to keep track of,
add more
and you can have more points and have more fun,
right.
in my opinion. All right, now let's get to the nuts and bolts. This is what people want to hear about. All right, when you're going through your draft, they're the obvious first picks of the draft, and I want, for the people that are just getting into it this year, who are those obvious picks? So let's just say 1 through 6.
The elite 4 running backs, we have Todd Gurley of the Rams, we have Le'Veon Bell of the Steelers, Ezekiel Elliott with the Cowboys, and David Johnson with the Arizona Cardinals. You want to be drafting a running back who's going to be bound for about 350 touches. That's rushing and receiving. And you also have Antonio Brown up there, who's kind of been the number 1 receiver for the last 4 years in a row, which is amazing consistency. And after that, the draft kind of opens up. Really, those are traditionally the top 5 picks in almost every draft I've seen.
Well, let's talk about them because I want to say something. Because Elliott, to me, does not catch the ball as the other 3 does. I mean, generally, he catches about 40, I believe. But when you're talking about Ty Gurley, you're talking 80 catches now. That's 40 extra points in PPR, which you say is now the default league, which means that's what, unless you click something that says standard, it's going to be PPR. So that's why Gurley, Le'Veon Bell, who has missed training camp yet again, and David Johnson, who was hurt last season, but he was remarkable the year before, 83 catches or something like that. and he had over 2,100 yards from scrimmage, which
number
is
one running back,
which is unheard of.
Yeah.
So can you differentiate with guys like that compared to an Elliott, who is more of a truck up the middle, and he'll get you the yards and touchdowns, but he won't get you the catches?
I do want to say with Elliott this year that I do expect him to have more catches this year, only because you remember they lost Jason Witten, they lost Des Bryant. So I kind of expect Elliott's catches to rise, but you're right. He's not that natural receiver like a David Johnson or a Le'Veon Bell is. I don't distinguish it that much. A lot of leagues even play 0.5 PPR.
Yeah, half PPR.
So it's tough when you're writing a draft guide to kind of cater to every single format. So I kind of use my standard as 0.5 just to kind of hit the middle. And believe it or not, it's not other than specific players who, like Julian Edelman, who have a lot of catches, not a lot of yards and touchdowns, other than those guys, there's not a real big difference between PPR and standard, especially up at the top.
All right, let's go to the next part of the first round. Let's say the standard league is 12 teams. I'm in a 16-team league, which really adds a lot of intrigue. A lot of people play 10-team leagues, which is fun because you get more of an all-star roster on there. So it means like 10 teams. But let's just presume it's 12. And let's go from 6 to 12. Who are some of the guys? Because this is where it kind of breaks open. Do you want to get DeAndre Hopkins receivers, or do you want to get some more running backs? What does Nick Guarisco do?
I love Leonard Fournette this year. He's been kind of the guy I'm kind of planting my flag with. Fournette is ranked 14th on ESPN. I have him at number 5, actually, believe it or not. I think Fournette, they added Andrew Norwell. They improved their offensive line. He's highly invested. The Jaguars are highly invested in him, taking him 4th overall. They have a very conservative team, great defense. They like to run. They don't trust Blake Bortles in the red zone. And Fournette lost weight. He played at 238 last year. This year he's playing at 223 to hopefully get rid of some of those ankle ailments that he had dating back to LSU. And then now you had a situation before the ankle injuries hit last year in week 6. Fournette had scored a touchdown in every game. He kind of took the league by storm, if you recall, and he averaged 21.6 PPR points a game. After that ankle injury in week 6, for the rest of the way, he only averaged 3.3 yards a carry, and he only averaged 13.8 fantasy points a game. So I'm thinking that if he loses weight and is able to stay more healthy with the Jags' investment in him and good offensive line, run-based team, I'm thinking with all of that, I think Fournette is going to have an amazing season this year.
So there's no homerism here. Even though you're a Tulane law grad, you're an LSU grad as myself, and I am in this 16-team league with folks from out of the state. So they're accusing me of homerism. So what do we say to combat that?
I mean,
he's the real deal.
Oh, he's definitely the real deal. And I mean, we should know that. And if he stays healthy, like those other running backs that I mentioned earlier in the show, he is a lock for like 350 total touches. And I think he's going to play more third downs this year, too.
Well, they've said that. Yeah. Actually, I just read that yesterday. Jacksonville's plans to get him involved on third down. Also, moving in that range, because who are some of those receivers after Antonio Brown that you can bank on? Because let me preface this. 2 years ago, I had DeAndre Hopkins high, and he was a monster last season. But let me say, 2 years ago, he sunk my team completely. Yeah. He was terrible. Is he bad in every even number year, or is he going to come through this year?
Well, a lot of it depends on how good Deshaun Watson is. Is Deshaun Watson the real deal or not? And that kind of divides the fantasy community on that. Hopkins goes about the late end of round 1, and you have him, you have Odell Beckham, you have Julio Jones, Keenan Allen, Michael Thomas for the Saints. You have even Devontae Adams I would throw into the mid-second round. There's a bunch of receivers, a bunch of them that are all about the same, I would argue. And that's why one of my personal strategies this year is to actually go with Rob Gronkowski late in the first round, because I think Gronk is going to put up similar numbers to those receivers. And the value of having a tight end producing those numbers is in such a shallow field at tight end. There's not a lot of tight ends after Gronk. The value of that is just so significant. He could lap the field at tight end. You could have a massive advantage. Remember Julian Edelman suspended for the first 4 games. They lost Brandon Cooks. And Gronk's last 7 games, he was the receiver 2 last year. He would have been the receiver 2 had he been a receiver right behind Keenan Allen, who had a very, very strong finish. And so Gronk is putting up these receiver numbers. So my logic is I think Gronk should be a late-in first-rounder, and he's going in the 20s.
You're not worried about injury?
Well, with first-round picks and second-round picks, with guys that get that much usage, they are all injury risk. Fournette is a huge injury risk. And I want a pick that, if he stays healthy, he's pretty much guaranteed not to bust. I don't want other factors to make him bust. I would want, the only reason that he's a flop would be for injuries. I know Gronk has missed some time, but as long as he stays healthy, just like Fournette, Gronk and Fournette are my two guys to go to in the first 2
What's your quarterback strategy?
My quarterback strategy is typically to wait, because I'm a big super flex fan where you can start 2 quarterbacks, but in leagues where
your league is super flex that I'm in. I love the fact that I got 2 quarterbacks in that league.
Quarterbacks are just so valuable in real life, and fantasy needs to prop them up more. It doesn't make any sense that you're taking.
I don't like that they only get 4 points for a touchdown. In my leagues, I tell, if I have any say in, I say give them 6. I just like it. Sorry.
And quarterbacks should be more valuable in fantasy football, but that's for another day. But for now, my basic quarterback strategy, if you're playing in a 1 quarterback league, which is traditional, I typically wait on them, especially in a 10-team league where there's just so many quarterbacks. They're so deep this year. If you have a 10-team league, there's plenty in free agency you can start. You can wait until after round 10 to draft your quarterback. And it sounds crazy because quarterback's the most important position in all of sports, but that's kind of how fantasy football is now. My strategy personally, there's 2 guys I'm really targeting. One is Drew Brees, and one is Matt Ryan. So kind of rivals there. But
I think you got people excited with the first, and they got some groans at home. I can hear them now for the second.
Yeah, Drew Brees, you can kind of get for a local draft, you kind of have to reach for him. I would say probably round 7, 8-ish, maybe a little higher.
People taking him in the second round.
If you're following the right strategy is. But then Matt Ryan, he's going, his average draft position's quarterback 15. I think he's going to have a very, very good season. He's got a great supporting cast.
Second year with Sarkisian.
I think everything's going to be more comfortable. They got great receivers. They added Calvin Ridley. Both his running backs can catch. They got a good O-line. Matt Ryan's going to have a bounce
problem
back
is
year.
you're not a long-time Saints guy.
It's
hard,
delicacy.
man.
I know.
It's 50 years of hatred
you
here.
Have to separate. You have to separate the game.
It's just,
you have to do what's
hard
best for your fantasy
I
team.
know that's a cardinal rule, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's hard to do.
You can't bring biases into the sport. And speaking of that, another quarterback I actually really like this year is Cam Newton, and it's just tough for me knowing that the 3 of the quarterbacks I like are in the same division, and 2 of them are rivals.
Who are the best quarterbacks?
The best, Aaron Rodgers is the first quarterback off the board. He typically goes in about round 3 in a normal draft. Some people like having their quarterback so they take them higher. I can advocate for Rodgers in about round 3 or 4 because you know what you're getting in him as long as he doesn't get hurt. He's been a top 2 quarterback for, I think it's the last 7 of 8 years.
When he's healthy.
Crazy. Yeah, exactly.
Brady's
after him.
Brady, Russell Wilson.
After Brady, which is typically about 2 rounds after Aaron Rodgers, there's kind of a little gap there. You're looking at Russell Wilson, Deshaun Watson, and Cam Newton. All go around the same area, probably about rounds 4 or 5.
All right, everybody wants to know who are the mid-round sleepers that Nick Guarisco likes.
Oh, man. I love a lot of, just every year is different. And this year, I love a lot of running backs in the mid-rounds, and it's causing me to kind of wait on running backs a little early. Take 1 early, and then I'll kind of wait to get my RBs 2 and 3 and 4 around round 4 to 6. Alex Collins is a guy I like for Baltimore.
A lot of usage, huh?
Yeah, a lot. Yeah, they treated him as a bell cow preseason. They didn't even play him. Didn't even want to touch him. And you know what you're getting out of him. The Ravens get Marshall Yanda back, their guard. Greg Roman's a great running game coordinator there. And he was a very talented runner. He's not going to get you many catches, so he's kind of a ding in PPR leagues, but very talented runner at the end of the last season. He was ranked in the top 8 running backs in the last, I believe it was 10 games of the season. He also was, if you're into analytics, he was Pro Football Focus's #1 rushing grade between all running backs last year.
What about my man Marshawn Lynch?
I do like Lynch a lot.
Is he back? Is he going to be a player this year?
I was down on Lynch last year, and he did start the season out of shape. And you could kind of tell his first 8 games, he really wasn't that good. He was kind of splitting carries. The last 8 games, Lynch was RB12, which means he finished as the top 12 running back, which is an RB1 in fantasy. And Lynch is a guy who, gets stronger as the season goes on. He's got a great offensive line. So Marshawn Lynch, Rex Burkhead, Lamar Miller, Jamal Williams, Adrian
You
Peterson.
like those guys?
I like all those guys.
Jamal Williams is a beast. I was high on him when he was drafted. I loved him when he was at BYU. Who to avoid? I don't have a lot of time left, but who do we need to avoid in this draft?
I'll give you some bold guys. Dalvin Cook is a guy I'm avoiding in the first round.
Dalvin Cook, because of his injury?
Injury, I don't like taking a player coming off his ACL in his first year back. They usually regain explosiveness about 18 to 24 months later. He also has O-line concerns. He also has Latavius Murray stealing goal line concerns. They might kind of ease him in. Might be a running back by committee there. Another guy, Jerick McKinnon, already dealing with a calf injury. I don't like these high-priced free agents in the first year. He's going in the third round.
He just seemed like he got paid a lot of money.
Yeah, he did.
I mean, for a part-time player. But go ahead.
Golden Tate, I think that the receivers in Detroit are going to be evened out between Tate, Kenny Galladay, and Marvin Jones.
McCoy?
Yeah, McCoy's a popular one. He's popular avoid, I would say. He is the focal point of the offense, but the Bills are not going to be a very good football team this year. They made the playoffs last year, but I would expect them to be about 4-12.
Yeah, and I watched one game where he's playing in snow up to his knees, and I'm like, you can't get much fantasy points doing this.
Yeah, I liked McCoy last year, but I think he's kind of entering a dumpster fire here in Buffalo this year.
All right, my man, I know you've been to Shays de la Shays right there.
Oh, yeah, I have.
And have you tried this task performance? Because this is a wonderful
Have I tried it? I wear this stuff every day to the gym.
Do you really?
I am not joking.
Do you
every
really?
Single day. I will wear this stuff. I'm a huge fan of it.
Myself, when I put it on 6 years ago, I have not taken it off, except for stuff like this on air. I wear it all the time. It's amazing.
It's phenomenal. It's extremely comfortable, and you don't sweat a lot in it. It's really good technology for sure. I love it.
Nick Guarisco, BigEasySportsTalk.com. We'll bring him in before the trade deadline as well. And we'll see, hey, how do you mix up your roster if possible? Trades aren't as big anymore. Anyway, hey, we're going to move forward. Hey, I have a guy I grew up watching on TV, and I reconnected with him. Well, I connected with him for the first time last week, and I was thrilled to do so. I remember watching him and Ron Swoboda do their thing on Channel 8 back in the 70s and 80s. His name is Ken Berthelot. He's coming up next right here on Primetime Sports. It's going to be a fun segment. Stay tuned. Hey, welcome back to Primetime Sports. I hope you got your fantasy football fill. Hey, now we're going to talk some New Orleans stories. If you're of my age, and that's old, but if you remember, and when I was in high school on Channel 8, man, they had Ken Berthelot. He also was teaming up with Ron Swoboda for about 3 years. Before that, it was Buddy DiLiberto. The great Buddy D and Alec Gifford brought Ken Berthelot to New Orleans, or at least he's been on a bunch of different stations around. But he came in on Channel 8 and then became the voice of the Tulane Greenway from 1985 to 2001. And we just had Troy Dannen on the show, and I know he's excited about this week because there's all the opening of the season, and obviously they're going to reintroduce the 98 team next week. But Ken Berthelot is his name, and sports is his game. How are you, buddy?
You bet. Oh, man. It's a pleasure to be on Primetime with you.
It is. It's a thrill for me to have you.
It really is.
Because I like bringing back the folks that, I grew up watching, and you're certainly one of the guys in that category. Talk about your time at Channel 8 and the craziness of working with Buddy D.
Buddy D was just Buddy D. There's no other way to say it. He was who he is, but every day was an adventure. I mean, every day you'd walk in and you go, what might happen today with Buddy D? And that's how it was. He was a two-finger typer.
Yeah.
And when we got the IBM Selectrix, how long ago was that?
Right,
IBM Selectrix. He couldn't type on one. He had to go back to the old two-finger type. But man, he'd have fun. And everything was always fired up, and he was always on the phones with the bookies, and he was always picking up that extra.
I love that.
Oh, he was always picking up that extra little tidbit that might give him an edge in picking the games. And one day, someone called, and I just typed up all his selections, and we put them on the Chiron to put them on the screen.
Right.
And a guy calls up, and I give him early. And Buddy, man, when I hung up, Buddy says, Ken, don't ever give my picks out before the 6 o'clock news. And I said, why? He says, it might affect the lines.
It might affect the line, like he has something to do with the lines.
Well, 3 years later, I said, in which way? Is that good or bad? Is they picking against you? Or
right. They're picking against. That's funny because I used to give out picks when I did radio all the time, but I never actually bet on them myself. So Buddy was giving the picks out and calling the bookie to actually get some action on it too.
Sometimes he'd be on the set, man, and there were no cell phones back then, but he'd have a telephone hooked up and he's on the line and, Buddy, you're on the air, get set, boom, and he's hanging up. Here I go.
Well, how fun was it to work with him?
It was so much fun. Listen, he was loyal, he was good. For a long time, it was just him and I, and one intern who was Ed Daniels, who was still in Loyola.
Ed Daniels.
He was our college intern, and Ed was learning the business. He would soon go off and get his first job in Lake Charles, and Buddy and I just continued to go. And of course, those were the days when he was having the feud with John Meekum.
Right. Yes.
So it was a lot of fun.
He's had a few feuds.
He's had a few feuds. Once I was doing an interview with Meekum in Vero Beach, and Meekum said, can we do this relaxed? Can I lay down and we'll just kind of watch practice? And I'm doing the interview. 3 questions in, he sees the mic flag. He realizes it's the Channel 8 mic flag. And he says, Buddy D station? And I said, yeah, Channel 8, Buddy D station. He goes, this isn't personal. And I do this with you, but this interview's over. You just hit it. This interview's over.
I can see John Meekum Jr., for those of you too young to know, was the first owner of the Saints. He got the Saints at like 26 years old. He was young. He is still alive today because I looked him up. He is in Houston still, and he is almost 80. You'd think he'd be much older since he started the team in 67, but the fact is he was so young. But, hey, Buddy D went on. But how about you moved on and you had Ron Swoboda, the ex-great Met who had one of the greatest, if not the greatest World Series catch ever, and that was the 69 World Series with the Mets, and there it is right there. The amazing Mets ended up beating the Baltimore Orioles in that to win it all. Ron Swoboda is another true character. He's on the Baby Cakes games now at Tim Grubb's.
Yes.
And people that are young might not remember he was a sportscaster here in town for a few stations, but with you.
First television job came from radio in New York, and he knew how to use the telephones. And when he came here, I said, man, just keep making those phone calls. Call everybody. Let them know who you are. Develop relationships. And he did. We had a great relationship. His loyalty was as strong as Buddy's. And you just got to love him reenacting the catch right there.
I love that right there.
But I remember the first day in, he did the 6 o'clock news, and he's typing up his promo for the 10 o'clock news, and a guy calls, and I hang up, and I go, Buddy, Ron, you're not going to believe this. This guy said he was in the stadium when you made the catch. Swoboda says, hey, man, if anybody calls like that, hang up on him. I said, that would be rude. He says, if everybody who said they were in the stadium would have been in the stadium when they made the catch, Shea Stadium would have held 453,672.
All right, I have a story for that. I'm going to say something real quick. I don't want to take your time up, but Don Sutton questioned me on whether, just like that, I'm working the Braves game with him. He questioned whether I was at his 300th victory in Anaheim, because I happened to be living out there that summer, and I'd seen Tom Seaver throw his 300th in New York, pitching for the White Sox against the Yankees. So I was like, hey, I'm in California. Sutton's going to do it. So I went, and Sutton they had a home run against him. Pete Incaviglia hit the home run longest one I've ever seen live at the time. It seemed like 600 feet. And so Sutton was in front of Skip Carey and all these people, doing the Braves, and he was calling me out. He goes, yeah, I'm sure you were there, just like the other million that told me that. I said, oh, really? I took 2 buses, and I got to the game, and then the guy, Incaviglia, hits a home run about 800 feet, and then I'm thinking, oh, my God, I wasted my time. He goes, all right, stop. I know you were there. All right. So bottom line is some of us do go to these games.
And he may have really done it.
Hey, by the way, Archie Manning, obviously, when you started, was king in the city. And Archie started, the Saints were actually starting to play pretty well. 1978, they had the 7-9 team, and back then that was a big deal. 8-8 in 79. But Archie got the NFC MVP that year. But you have some stories because you not only knew Archie, but you knew his kid Peyton as well. You were interviewing him when he was just a little kid.
A lot of times it was so crowded around Archie and some of the stars on that team right after the game.
That's you right there,
That's
right?
me.
Yeah.
And you'd get to Peyton, And I'd always ask Archie, hey, can I ask Peyton a question? And the two times that made, the two instances that made the ESPN Book of Manning.
Right,
yeah,
right.
That's the time. The first time he said, ask him who his favorite quarterback is. Oh. So, you know, who's your, and do it in baby talk. You know, hey, Peyton, who's your favorite quarterback?
Right.
Roger Staubach.
Roger Staubach. Roger Staubach.
Roger Staubach. He said it like that. And then the next year, I asked Archie, hey, can I do it again? He says, yeah, do it again. You're going to like the answer. And he says, my dad.
My dad.
My dad.
How great was that?
That was just fantastic. And, you know, you do it at the time. We used it. You think it's going to die right there. And to see it come back on the Book of Manning, not because I'm doing it, but to see it come back because of, I think, what it meant to Peyton and Archie and the Manning family. That's what makes it so sweet.
You know, that Book of Manning was tremendous.
That was
tremendously well done. It was done with the SEC network, which is part of ESPN. Everybody thinks it's a 30 for 30, but it's an SEC story thing. But it's basically the same deal. And I was surprised that Archie nixed that idea. He didn't know Rory Carve, who was a new producer. Mm-hmm. And I'm dealing with the same thing because I'm doing something coming up on Burt Jones and the great Tommy Casanova. And, you know, they knew me a little, but not much. They didn't know what I could do. And I had to get through that hurdle. And thank goodness that Olivia forced Archie, said, hey, we're going to do this thing, whether you like it or not. And it turned out to be fabulous.
I know. It really did. I had given Archie the only copies that I had, and he called me and said, hey, do you still have the copies? I said, oh, Arch, I think I gave them to you. And he says, well, I've looked and I couldn't find them. And you talk about a panic. I thought we'd lost that video. But sure enough, when he opened up his attic to ESPN and they went through everything, they found that video.
It. Wow.
Thank goodness.
Well, you also became the voice of the Tulane Green Wave, and I do remember that as well from 85 to 2001. You have a funny story because Tulane lost the program in basketball because of the point-shaving scandal for a few years in the 80s. Then it was resurrected with Perry Clark, who brought this team to the NCAA tournament, and they had a lot of success. But you have a story about his superstitions that I have to share.
Well, but before I tell that, Mac Brown was the person who brought me. Mac Brown and Wright Waters were the two that brought me back to Tulane, or brought me to Tulane.
Yeah, the former football coach,
from Channel 8. And so it was exciting working with Mac Brown. He was brought in to change a culture. They had some problems before in the Wally English era because the basketball scandal had taken place. Mac came in with a fresh face from Oklahoma. And to show you how positive he was, I remember this so vividly. He goes 1-10 his first year, man.
Yeah.
He brought in a whole slew of new players.
Everybody loved Mac Brown, though.
But goodness, Scott, he just because of what the potential of what might happen, he got an interview at Mississippi State to be the football coach there on a 1-10 season that year. So that was the potential. That's the changing culture that Mac Brown had brought to Tulane. Then Perry Clark comes in. They don't even have enough money for basketballs. They went to the first practice. They had to figure out where to get basketballs. They might have run to a local sporting goods store to get some basketballs. But
the old Oshmans back in the day.
Yeah, that's true.
Right.
So they get the basketballs. Perry had a lot of superstitions, some too long to tell. But he did have one where he kept the record of the one-loss record on every shirt, tie, and suit. And he always wore a suit. He was always impeccably dressed.
So whatever he was wearing, he kept the record of it and probably wore that suit more if he won more with it.
At his show in a restaurant at Ruth's Chris Steakhouse, 711 North Broad, that just comes out automatically.
Oh, yeah.
He has a conversation one day, and somebody says, Coach, I really like that red tie you wore for a game. He says, I can't wear that anymore. He says, why? The guy says, why not? He goes, well, the red tie is 0-3, the shirt was 0-2, and the suit's 0-1, and you never wear winless things together again. So
that's great.
0-3, done.
Yeah,
the tie's gone.
It's over.
And I'm going, Coach, you're a little taller than I am, but I really like red ties too.
Red ties look good on me. You and Donald Trump, apparently. Hey, by the way, this is a whole different, maybe a little bit more macabre, but Vince Marinello, did you ever cross paths with him? Obviously, he was convicted of murdering his ex-wife or wife at the time. I just threw this out because y'all are kind of contemporaries, right?
Vince was a friend, a good friend. He was at Channel 6. I was at Channel 8. We really got close in the rookie camps at Vero Beach when the Saints used to go to Vero Beach. Wayne Mack would let, I think it was Wayne Mack would let Vince go down to with the rookies in the first week and a half. Buddy would let me go down with the rookies, and when we would come back to take over, those two guys as sports directors would go down and spend the next 2.5 weeks there with the veterans. And we had worked together on some things, and look, it's not a lot that comes out of there, but a lot of features. So we worked together. We did a little carpool for our film going back. They didn't have satellites back in that day. You actually had to drive 45 minutes to Melbourne and put this on Eastern Sprint and get it back to somebody could pick it up at the airport. We worked together on that, but we were very good friends. And I remember one time I'm doing a stand-up, and he runs up behind me and he grabs me and he goes, "Hey, this is Vince Marinello. Anybody giving my boy Ken Berthelot a problem, you come and see me."
Yeah, well, apparently he wasn't lying. Hey, by the way, as we close, Ty Graffinini, who's doing a fantastic job. You two have a little series going on together. I'm going to give you this from Shea
I'm so happy for his success.
And as you signed this helmet, because you're part of this, he signed it as well. There's a great shirt from Task Performance, which is another Tulane guy.
Love him.
I've done a lot of Tulane the last 2 weeks. I was quiet with Tulane for a few weeks, a lot of LSU and Saints, but we wanted to give them some love before the season. So give us a signature, and as you're doing it, kind of briefly tell people about what you and Todd are doing, reconnecting with the '98 championship team.
We are doing Film Room, and Film Room is just a look back,
little
6
series,
episodes.
right, 6 episodes.
We look back, and you know, it's interesting. We talked about the Cincinnati game on the first 2 series, and it was all offense.
Right.
And Jerry Phillips, who was a guy who could just put you down with one boom, you know, as a linebacker. And Jerry Phillips comes in and says, "Hey, we played a little defense too." And I said, "Oh,
yes,
Jerry,
they did."
So episode 3 is for you, baby. Episode 3 was all defense, and the defense played a critical role. You know what the defense did in the '98 season? The defense in the '98 season did exactly what they had to do. In close games, they did enough to give us the win. And in the games where they weren't needed, they just had a good time and picked off some balls. But I'll tell you what Tommy Bowden taught me in that season, okay? An offensive system, a good head coach, and a quarterback, like the Saints today, can do wonders for your program.
Just like Ken Berthelot did. We're bringing Ken back to have with Ron Swoboda another time. Ron Swoboda, the great Met, who they had so many great times together. I want to thank everybody at CST and WLAE, including my producer, Will Hill, and Naila Jones. And thank you so much. We'll see you next week right here on Primetime Sports.